Hello and welcome to the Par 3 brought to you by thelines.com. Matt Brown, Steven Andress. It is the Wells Fargo edition of this. We do have an elevated event, limited field, only 69 players, would be 70, but Ludwig Oberg decided that he was going to take the week off dealing with a little bit of a knee problem. So we're down to 69 runners in this one, Steven. Of course, as always, guys, if you want the full course breakdown, head on over to thelines.com, read John's article. We are not going to give you all of that in this video. Just going to give you 3 plays from each of us. If you want the full card that we're going to be putting in this week, you can head over to thelines.com. Upper right-hand corner is a Discord button. You can join for free, and we post all of our plays in there. All right, Steven, you're on the box, my friend. We're going to let you start things off.
All right. By the way, most importantly this week, Scottie Scheffler is not in the field with his plus 350 odds at the top of the board, which makes it even more exciting to handicap this tournament. And I'm going to begin with the guy who has tragically finished second to Scottie Scheffler, not once but twice this year. So perhaps with Scottie not here, Wyndham Clark gets his big win. Now, he's got a signature event win this year at Pebble Beach, but it was a 54-hole event. Finally, the books have taken notice of Wyndham Clark, Matt, because there were weeks earlier this year where he didn't cash an outright, but he was going off at 50-1 odds, and I scooped those and sadly didn't cash them. But clearly those were mispriced in my opinion, and now they've adjusted, and you have to pay less than 20-1 right now, especially with Oberg not being in the tournament. So what I will say is that there are a couple of books out there that are consistently week in and week out giving you odds boosts. BetMGM and Bet365 are the two that stood out to me. So I was able to get Wyndham Clark up to 22-1 for this event. And I think that's a great price, even though it's less than what we paid recently. Last 24 rounds, he's about third in the modeling service that I subscribe to and the stats that I pop in over that span. He's top 5 across the board from last 36 rounds, last 50 rounds. It's just a really clean profile, right? He bombs it off the tee, which is a huge plus here at Quail Hollow. He's got a great short game. He does not 3-putt all that often. And if you look at his long irons, he's top 15 in the field as well from 175 to 200 and 200 plus. Probably makes sense that he's a past winner. So all of these things kind of line up here. And even though we're paying a steeper price than we have, I still think it's just, what the price should be for Wyndham Clark. And, maybe this is a hot take. Maybe he should even be more in that Xander Schauffele tier, considering how often Clark has been able to close big events over the past calendar year and how much Schauffele has struggled to do so.
Yeah, full disclosure, guys, we do not speak about our picks before we come on here. We want to make sure that we have just a natural reaction to what everyone's coming to the table with. I had to pick 3 different bets this week than Steven because I actually am on Wyndham Clark as well. If you guys follow the work that we do, you'll remember big score for us last year on Wyndham Clark. Basically paid for your golf betting for a couple of seasons if you hit it last year, 72-1 on this one. And honestly, there's no reason to not go back to him here. And like you mentioned, without Scottie Scheffler in this field, he might be the best player in the field. I mean, Xander's the most consistent player in the field, but what is Xander's win equity? Xander's win equity is basically 0. Like, he just doesn't win tournaments. He's basically a mortal lock to finish in the top 10 of this event and maybe even the top 5, but like he just doesn't win. And as far as like win equity, we're talking
last year for Xander here, right?
Yeah. But when we're talking, outrights, Wyndham goes and gets it done. And so I do like Wyndham here in this one, do have him on my card. My first pick is a guy that showed up number 1 in my 36 round model, showed up number 3 in my 24 round model. And again, I run models on 3 different sites. And like, this is kind of like I want to see what the different algorithms spit out, and all of them, from what I found important this week, love Tony Finau. And so Tony Finau getting the love here from me in this one. I'll admit, I put a heavy emphasis on driving distance, on strokes gained off the tee, like things like that. We know Tony Finau bombs it off the tee. This is a guy that averages well over 300 yards. He is, inside the top 6, 7 in this field as far as driving distance. you go in, approach shots with these long irons. He's really good there as well. So plays long courses very well too. No coincidence, the guys that are popping at the top of the model for me, because I put in some emphasis on how do you play these long courses, and Tony Finau, second overall in this field, only behind Rory McIlroy as far as success at long courses, as you would imagine. Rory off the tee and everything that goes along with all that. And the reason, guys, if you're all wondering, I'll give a little bit of a sneak peek into this course stuff. And again, you can get the full breakdown over in John's articles. The reason we're heavy on off the tee and driving distance stuff this week, it's just not very penal. Like, this isn't the Quail Hollow that hosted a major. When it's the Wells Fargo, we're talking 2-inch rough, which is nothing for these dudes. And so you can let her rip. And as long as you aren't just way, way, way off track, it's not going to really bother these guys too much, Steven. And so for Finau, who can get a little sprayy every now and then with his stuff, I'm not worried about it near as much, as long as he's sending it out there, which we know he can do. So like me some Tony Finau this week.
I thought long and hard about Tony Finau. He was one of the first guys off my card this week. I see what you see. A couple of weeks ago at the Houston Open, he finished second in that tournament. He had one of the 4 best strokes gained tee to green events of his entire career. What got me is, like, I still kind of think of Tony Finau like a Xander Schauffele. I worry about the win equity. He's got a handful of wins since 2022, but they were in weaker fields like the Mexico Open, the 3M Open, the Rocket Mortgage. I worry about his win equity when we get into more of a top-heavy field here. Now, you can make a very valid argument that it's not as heavy or loaded of a field with all the live guys gone, with Oberg not playing this week, so maybe Tony can get it done. I still worry about the putting. Like, can he give us enough putting in a week to close out one of these tournaments? But the tee to green has been phenomenal. I mentioned the Houston Open. He's had several events already this year where he's had 5, 6, 7, 8 strokes gained tee to green. It's just the putter. So, but you're getting 40-1 on him versus 8-1 on Xander Schauffele. So don't blame you one bit when you consider the price that you have to pay for a guy like Tony Finau. The second guy for me was one that wasn't really peaking top 5 at all when you look at last 50, last 36, last 24 rounds. But if you filter by long courses that are more than 7,400 yards, well, now he's starting to show up a little bit in the rankings, and that's Max Homa. And he's about 22-1, best price as we record here on Tuesday afternoon. Really shoots up the rankings when you start filtering by long courses. And it makes sense if you look at his results, right? You know, this is a guy who has won at Torrey Pines. He has won this event a couple of years ago. He finished 3rd at the Masters a few weeks back here. So top 10 at the Arnold Palmer. These are all lengthy courses, even though he, over the past 24 rounds, only ranks 25th in this field in driving distance. So, but he's accurate off the tee, and in particular in his approach game, Matt, he's really good with the long irons. I mean, this is a guy who is top 10 in this field in proximity from 175 to 200, top 25 from 200 plus overall, top 10 in strokes gained on approach, and has the short game to balance it out. Like, this is kind of a major championship prep venue, and you have to have a well-rounded game to contend and maybe win here. Max Homa's proven that last couple of years, and with a field that really didn't excite me when you looked at the odds board, Matt, having to pay a tax on some of these players with Scotty not in the event and now Oberg also out, it's making it tough to kind of swallow some of these prices. So I'm looking for a guy with win equity, maybe some course history, and a guy that I'm not worried about on a very long course. And Max Homa kind of fit all of those. Yeah,
a guy that's probably not going to pop in a lot of y'all's models out there. The recent form's been up and down with Max. And so this is kind of one of those leap of faith type bets, but I'm with you. Like, I have a leap of faith bet as well that we'll talk about here right now, which is Sam Burns. And so basically the problem with Sam Burns for this entire PGA Tour season is he cannot figure out the driver. I mean, he is spraying it all over the place. Ends up costing him penalty strokes. When you get in penalty strokes, you get into horrible situations. He ends up having these like disaster blow up holes over the course of tournaments. Well, in one where it's just not going to be very penal unless he is just absolutely spraying it all over the place, which who knows, maybe he will, but we're getting a pretty nice price on Sam Burns for a guy that you talk about win equity, has won multiple times on tour. We know when he gets hot, can putt with the absolute very best of all of everybody out there. And so I kind of see Sam Burns as a dude that it's like, hey, he kind of fell on some hard times here, struggled just a bit, but I'm going to kind of bet on pedigree here, Steven. I'm going to bet on the fact that we do have long-term success with Sam Burns, even though there's been some struggle going on this year with him. You can find him as high as 50-1 out there. Like, find me a dude that's won or contended as many times as Sam Burns that you're going to get 50-1 on in a 69-person field. You just don't get it that often. And so for me, I'm just going to hope maybe we either run hot with the driver and then we don't even have to worry about all that stuff, or even if he is still kind of spraying it, we know what he can do in every other aspect of the game. So I'm going to take it along, kind of a buy low spot here, in my opinion, on Sam Burns, a dude that can score and score in bunches so long as he's not playing from out of the woods all the time.
Has Mrs. Sam Burns had the baby yet?
I am assuming yes, because he's in the field.
Yeah, I was just kind of like searching around social media and trying to figure it out, because we were all under the impression that the Burns family was going to have their baby before Scotty. So but I haven't seen any reports or anything on. Maybe they're doing a good job of keeping it quiet or whatever. But I'd feel a lot better if I knew the baby was here, because then there's no chance he's going to WD. But listen. And
by the way, Sam Burns is a win bet only guy, like, right? So like, because he is, I know there's a no cut here, but it's like Sam Burns is just as likely to miss the cut as he is to win the tournament, because his game right now is so incredibly volatile. Remember, by the way, guys, he was on the way to winning a tournament already earlier this year, and then he dunked one in the water on 17 and didn't end up winning the tournament. So it's not like this guy's like completely out of form. Like, he was well on his way to winning an event just a couple months ago. And so I just look at it like that. Like, don't top 10 him or something like that, or whatever. Like that's not Sam Burns. Sam Burns is an outright bet, or you just pass on him, because if he's playing great, he's going to be in the mix to win the thing. And with that, you can be able to monetize the ticket.
All right. Last guy for me is a guy who just mentioned WD possibilities. Well, Will Zalatoris did that last week and is back in the event this week. And he said he had a flare up last week with his back. And well, I don't buy it, Matt. I don't. If you look at the schedule, if he would have played last week and this week, a signature event with a huge purse, and the following week, the PGA Championship, a major, that would have meant Will Zalatoris would have played 6 consecutive tournaments, 6 consecutive weeks on the calendar, which is really stupid in your first season back from major back surgery and rehab and all of that. So,
and Steven, to add some context here with this, if people are going like, well, why wouldn't he just say that? He's from Texas. He's expected to play in that event. So it's kind of like, hey, let me use an excuse of like, I'm injured, as opposed to like, hey, I'm just not coming to play for you guys. Right. So if you're wondering, like, if you're going like, well, why wouldn't you just say, hey, I don't want to play this week? He was expected to play, because all these dudes that are from certain areas are just expected to play and show up for their hometown people. And that just, that's why, if you're wondering why we're saying like, yeah, maybe there was some shenanigans going on there, is because he just, it's tough. If there was a tournament in your hometown, Steven, or my hometown, we're expected to play, right? And it's like, you don't show up, then the fans feel slighted. But if you're injured, it's a little bit easier for them to swallow.
Right. But I also don't. Yeah, exactly. He said he was injured, but I don't buy that he was injured for all the reasons you just laid out perfectly. So if you look at the modeling on its face, it's another guy like Homa that really doesn't just like light the board on fire, right? But when we put in the caveat of difficult scoring conditions, well, now here comes Will Zalatoris up the rankings. Inside the top 10, close or inside the top 5 over the last 50, last 36, and last 24 rounds. I view Will Zalatoris kind of like a big game hunter. If it's a really difficult course with lightning fast greens, this is a guy who has consistently put up solid performances in those conditions. Let's just look this year, coming off that injury, at some of the courses that are year in and year out known to be some of the more well-respected, major-like conditions on the PGA Tour. The Genesis Open over at Riv finishes second. The Arnold Palmer finishes fourth at Bay Hill. The Masters, top 10 at that event. I am perfectly fine taking a shot on Will Zalatoris. I don't care that he didn't play well at the RBC Heritage at Harbour Town, which is a shorter course that neutralizes some of his advantages off the tee. I don't care that he missed the cut at the Players. The Players and Sawgrass is a wonky tournament that has no consistency or correlation year in and year out. So I was able to get 40-1 on Will Zalatoris at Bet365. They actually have boosted the price to get Will Zalatoris in an each way with 8 places. So if he finishes in the top 8, you're going to get 1/5 of those odds paid out as well, giving me the chance to hit an outright and a top 8 on Will Zalatoris at 8-1. So I think this is just a guy that I want to be able to play at this type of price. Now, it would have been nicer if I would have just bet him earlier in the week before Oberg withdrew. I could have gotten 50 or 55-1, but considering what's left in this field and what he's done at difficult venues, I'm just fine with 40-1, Matt.
Yeah, I also have Zalatoris on the card. Like we said, we don't talk about this beforehand. So what I did, Steven, is so if you go back and you put in February 2021 to the end of the 2022 season, so when he was actually healthy and he wasn't playing injured, where does he fall in the models then? Guess where he's at? He's 4th overall in the model, right? Only behind Rory and Justin Thomas. By the way, this is when Justin Thomas was playing great, like, and whatever. So it's like, it's one of those things where you look and you say, oh, when the guy was healthy, he's going to rocket up to the top of the models. If you do anything, short term here, if you just plug in last 24 rounds or last 36 rounds, even last 50 rounds, you're going to get a really skewed view of this because this is a guy that was playing injured. He was playing at like 60% capacity and he was a shell of himself. If you believe that he's back, which I think you and I both do, or at least close to it, then you go in, you put in when he was healthy. How did he fare in courses like this when he was healthy? Like I said, 4th overall in this model. So for me, I like some Zalatoris. I didn't play him outright. I ended up playing him I kind of wimped out here at a ties pay top 5 price, but I don't mind an outright on him either with that. I'm going to close things out here with a guy that was just destroying all versions of the model from a recency standpoint. Now, this is one where you do the longer term stuff when he was still very new on tour, not going to rocket up your models. You start looking at the last 20 rounds, last 24 rounds, last 32 rounds, last 36 rounds, stuff like that. A name is going to pepper your models, and it's Sahith Theegala. And that guy has just really, really come into his own here over the last year on tour, Steven. And again, I didn't play him outright. Maybe I'll have a sprinkle when it's all said and done. I played him top 10. I think this guy's a grinder. I think this guy is going to be able to go out on a hard, long course where he really does. If you look across the stat profile of the people that we're interested in for a tournament like this, he is right there in kind of all of the categories. Now, is he best in any of them? No, but he is a well-rounded skill set for what we're looking for here. And honestly, Steven, if he wasn't as bad around the greens as he has been, which by the way, he's in the bottom 12, 15 players in this field around the green, he'd probably be inside the top 5 in several of these models that I ran, but he's just so low in strokes gained around the green that it pushes him down a little bit. But, he won't have to scramble if he's hitting the greens. You don't have to scramble if you're hitting the greens. And so he's been playing very well with his long irons and all of that. And so for me, Sahith Theegala, it's a top 10, maybe a sprinkle on the outright. I'm going to be looking into the head-to-head markets whenever those get posted. Obviously not out right now when we're recording this early on a Tuesday, but I might take on some people with Theegala this week. I think this is I think we're watching a dude really start to put it together, and it's like maybe he's not ready to win a bunch right now. He's going to win a bunch down the line, but I certainly think in the head-to-head market or in placement markets, he could be a really solid bet this week.
Certainly would fit the trend of breakout winners the past few years here, with guys like Wyndham Clark and Max Homa getting big wins at Quail Hollow. He was on my short list too, Matt. Can't blame you one bit for doing Thigala. The price was that was one of the guys where there are a lot of guys this week where the price was really hard to swallow. Thigala was one of them once you see a 2 in front of his name there. But I get it, man. I get why he's popular. I get why people have already bet him like you. Wouldn't shock me in the least if he wins this week. I'll give you one more name just as a long shot. Haven't decided if I want to add him to the card yet. If I do, it'll be in Discord. There's only one guy in this field who was top 7 in strokes gained ball striking. So that combines off the tee and iron play over the past 36 and the past 24 rounds, while also being above average in this field in putting. And it's Akshay Bhatia. Now, I don't know if he's ready to win a big time event like this with a lot more bigger names in the field than the other events that he has won and the other events that he's contended at, which were basically like off week events for these stars. But his ball
2 more studs out of the field though. I mean, like no Scheffler, no Oberg. So I mean, like,
all the guys gone from past years, right?
Yeah,
like it's a lot thinner crop than what it's used to be to win a signature event, especially this week. And I mean, if you watch this guy, his ball striking is impeccable. And the only bugaboo on him coming into this tour was his putting, and he switched to the broomstick putter, and it's leveled it out to make him more of a tour average putter. So
not the longest guy off the tee, but like everything else should make up for that.
Right. And for whatever reason, the modeling I was doing I had a lot of stuff in the model this week where it wasn't totally being weighed down if you were a bad driver or bad distance off the tee. And he was overcoming that kind of below average deficiency. So just a name to think about potentially.
Yeah. Once you told me you were a little bit interested, I started like tweaking just a little bit of the stuff where if I took all, cause I had a super heavy emphasis on driving distance. So if I kind of backed off at least a little bit on driving distance and maybe put a little bit more in some of the other buckets and just spread that out a little bit, he actually did then at that point over the last 36 rounds, end up at 7th. So like, just to kind of like, it was just, I had such an incredibly high, percentage on driving distance, which, look, he's not short by any stretch, but he's about 10, 12, 13 yards off of the kind of the upper tier guys, right? He's in the bottom half of the field when it comes to driving distance. He's not at the bottom. He's just in the bottom half, when it comes to driving distance. So, when you weight it as heavily as I did, that's why it was like shoving him down. And so once you did that, like while we were doing this, I was kind of like, hey, why did this happen? And then it was, once you just take like a little bit of the percentile off of the driving distance, then he rockets up the board there as well. Probably someone I'm gonna have to look into a little bit more, whether it be in a head-to-head or a grouping or something like that, or maybe even some sort of placement market or outright bet as well. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, go ahead, subscribe to the channel. So many of you have already. What are you waiting on? Just go ahead. It's free. Hit the button. We do appreciate your support there. Hit that thumbs up. And then if we glossed over anybody, let us know in the comment section. Who do you think that we missed in this one for sure? You also want to be a subscriber come next week whenever we get to Major Time, because I happened to make a little trip to Augusta National. And when I made that little trip to Augusta National, I picked up a couple of little goodies along the way, Steven. And I think we might do a giveaway for the PGA next week. That being said, gonna need to be a subscriber to the channel to be a part of that. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button while you're here. Again, course breakdown, full course breakdown over at thelines.com. Read John's article. It is one of the very best on the internet. It will help you in your process. I promise you. For Steven, I am Matt. Good luck on all your Wells Fargo bets.